But so in New Mexico, you have to understand that in order to become a state, the United States was like, there are too many fucking Indians in this state to make you a state. Like, we don't want this many Indians. Like, we want the land, we just don't want the people. And so in response to that, the population of New Mexico was like, well, how do we convince them that we're not really Indians? How do we convince them that we're not Mexican Indians? And so they fabricated this idea, this identity of like, well, we're Spanish. We're descendants of conquistadors. We're not descendants of the savages from Mexico. And so this became this really unfortunate way of dealing with the Anglo, racism and bigotry of the time. And then that just kind of stuck. So here in New Mexico, you almost saw overnight Mexican restaurants becoming Spanish restaurants. And so, oh, this is Spanish food, it's not Mexican food. And there's like it's this myth, it's this fantasy that they've created. And it was in response to the United States being full of a bunch of racists. And if you look at the writings at the time when they were discussing statehood for New Mexico, people in Congress and senators, they were very vocal about, we do not want these mixed blood Indians to be part of our country. So we need to hold off on allowing them to become a state. And so this was the response to that. And so you got this myth that was created. And then you have the civil rights struggle. You have the Chicano movement where people really started reconnecting in a meaningful way of like, well, no, wait, that's bullshit, man. And realizing like we have roots that matter, that the food that we grew up eating. We don't eat paella in fucking northern New Mexico. We don't speak, sorry, northern New Mexicans, you don't speak an ancient form of Castilian. You speak a regional version of Spanish that is highly influenced by indigenous languages that come from indigenous peoples that we descend from, both from Mesoamerica and the tribes here in New Mexico. It's become, especially in the 1980s, I remember this very distinctly. There was like fights that would happen between Hispanos, people who call themselves Hispanos, and people who call themselves Chicanos, like political fights, community fights over what should be taught in schools, what statues should go up, and these all became ingrained